The abandoned St. Agnes Church stood like a forgotten sentinel on the outskirts of a small New England town, a steeple sagging under the weight of time and neglect. Sophia Grant, a restoration architect in her mid-30s, parked her weathered SUV in the overgrown lot, her heart heavy with purpose. The church shuttered since the 1800s after a hush-tup scandal. Her latest project, chance to preserve history and honor her father, murdered a decade ago in an unsolved case that still gnawed at her. Sophia, driven by his loss and her own need to save forgotten places, aimed to restore St. Agnes and reopen it to the public, turning decay into hope. The November air was sharp, carrying the scent of wet stone and pine as Sophia stepped inside, her flashlight cutting through the gloom. The nave was a cavern of dust, pews splintered, stained glass windows dulled but intact. Statues of saints lined the walls, their stone faces solemn, almost watchful. She traced the intricate details of the altar, imagining her father's pride. He'd loved old buildings, teaching her to see stories in their cracks. This church was her therapy, a way to rebuild herself alongside it. As she explored, a low hum vibrated through the floor, and at midnight the bell tower rang deep, resonant tolls. Though the ropes were long rotted, Sophia froze, her breath catching. A faint light bloomed at the altar, illuminating shadowy figures kneeling in prayer, their forms indistinct but human, heads bowed. She blinked, and they vanished, the bells silent, the church dark again. Her pulse raced, but she shook it off. Old wiring, she muttered, though the air felt heavier, charged with something unspoken. The next morning her team arrived. Liam, her assistant, a kind but skeptical man in his late 20s, grappling with the loss of his Clara, a volunteer historian curious but wary, her faith shaken by a strict religious upbringing. They gathered in the vestry, their voices echoing off cracked plaster. "This place is a wreck," Liam said, eyeing a broken pew. "You sure it's worth saving?" Sophia nodded, her voice firm. "It's history. My dad always said places like this hold the town's soul. We'll make it live again." Clara, flipping through a notebook, hesitated. "There's a reason it's been closed. I heard stories something about a murder, a priest, back in the 1800s. The town doesn't talk about it." Sophia frowned, the midnight bells echoing in her mind. "Just rumors. We focus on the new wiring, glass repairs, structural checks." They toured the church, cataloging damage. The stained glass depicted saints, their colors muted but vivid in the morning light. Sophia noticed one panel. A kneeling congregation seemed to shimmer, almost moving, but she blamed the sun. Liam tested the bell tower, finding no mechanism to explain the ringing. "Must have been the wind," he said, though his eyes lingered on the shadows. A local Mr. Harlan arrived unannounced, his polished demeanor clashing with the church's decay. "Represent the town's historical society," he said, his smile tight. "We're eager to see St. Agnes restored, but proceed carefully. Old places have memories." Sophia sensed his unease, his words carrying a warning she couldn't place. She thanked him, but his presence lingered like a shadow. Later, she sat alone in the nave, sketching restoration plans, her father's memory close. He'd been killed in a robbery gone wrong, the killer never caught, and Sophia carried the guilt of not pushing harder for answers. This church was her chance to make something right, to give back what loss had taken. She shared her story with the team over coffee, needing them to understand. "My dad loved places like this," she said, her voice soft. "He was killed before he could finish his own projects. This is for him." Liam nodded, his own grief surfacing. "Lost my to a car accident. I get it, fixing this place feels like fixing us." Clara's eyes were distant. "My family was strict. Churches scare me now, but I want to help." Their bond strengthened Sophia's resolve, but as night fell, the church grew colder. She stayed late, measuring the apse when the bells rang again, sharp and unyielding. The light returned, fainter but clear, showing kneeling figures, their faces blurred but pleading. Sophia's heart pounded, her father's face flashing among them, his eyes urging her forward. She stumbled back, the light fading, the bells silent. The church wasn't just old, it was alive, its secrets tied to her own pain. Her mission to reopen it was set, but the midnight bells and ghostly figures suggested she was uncovering more than history. And the path ahead felt less like restoration and more like a reckoning. The St. Agnes Church stood silent under a gray New England sky. Its crumbling stone walls and sagging steeple, a stark contrast to Sophia Grant's vision of restoration. The architect, driven to reopen the abandoned church to honor her father's unsolved murder and her own need to preserve history, felt the weight of the previous night's events, the midnight bells, the ghostly light illuminating kneeling figures that vanished in an instant. The memory clung to her, stirring unease, but Sophia pushed it aside, determined to focus on her goal. The church was her therapy, a way to mend her grief, but its secrets whispered in the shadows, hinting at a past she couldn't ignore. Her team, Liam, her supportive but skeptical assistant, and Clara. The wary historian gathered in the vestry, their tools scattered across a dusty table. The air smelled of mildew and old wood, the stained glass casting muted colors across their faces. Sophia outlined the day's tasks: reinforce the bell tower, clean the windows, assess the altar. "We're bringing this place back," she said, her voice steady, despite the chill in her spine. "For the town, for history." Liam tested a loose pew, his brow furrowed. "After last night's bells, I'm wondering if this place wants to stay forgotten." Clara, flipping through old records, nodded, found something in the archives. St. Agnes closed after a priest was murdered here in 1876. The town hushed it up, said it was a drifter, but no one was convicted. Sophia's stomach tightened, her father's unsolved case echoing in the story. "That's just gossip. We focus on the work." They spread out, Liam climbing to the bell tower, Clara cataloging artifacts, Sophia measuring the nave. As she worked, the stained glass caught her Aja panel of a congregation seemed to flicker, showing not saints but kneeling figures, their heads bowed in prayer, just like the ghostly light. She blinked, and it was gone, the panel normal again. Her pulse quickened, but she chalked it up to fatigue from the long drive. At noon they broke for lunch, sharing sandwiches in the vestry. Sophia opened up, needing her team's trust. "My dad was killed 10 years ago," she said, her voice soft. "Robbery gone wrong," they said, but no one was caught. "He loved old buildings like this. Restoring St. Agnes feels like keeping him alive." Liam's eyes softened, his own loss surfacing. "I died in a crash 2 years back. I get it, fixing this place is like fixing what's broken in us." Clara hesitated, her voice low. "My family was so religious, it suffocated me. I left the church, but this project, it's pulling me back. I'm scared what we'll find." Their shared pain forged a bond, grounding Sophia. But as work resumed, the church grew colder, the air heavy. Clara uncovered a journal in the sacristy, its pages detailing the priest's murder, Father Elias, killed during a midnight mass, his death tied to a hidden confession, the town buried. Sophia's heart raced. Her father's name was Elias, a coincidence that felt too close. That evening, the bells rang again, unprompted, their tolls deep and mournful. Sophia rushed to the nave, Liam and Clara behind her. The stained glass shimmered, reflecting a scene of a packed church, figures kneeling, their faces blurred but anguished. One resembled her father, his eyes pleading. Sophia gasped, the vision fading, the bells silent. "Did you see that?" she asked, her voice trembling. Liam nodded, pale. "I saw her, my—" Clara clutched her notebook, whispering, "It's the murder. They're still here." Sophia's fear grew, but so did her resolve. She visited the town historian, an elderly woman named Mrs. Tate, who confirmed the murder rumors. The Harlans, a powerful family, funded the church. Some say they covered up the killing to protect their name. Back at St. Agnes, Sophia felt watched, the statue's stone eyes seeming to follow her. "Mr. Harlan." The town figure who'd visited called to check progress, his tone sharp. "Don't stir up old stories," he warned. "Focus on the restoration." His words chilled her, echoing the cover-up. She sat in the nave, journaling her fears, her father's face in the glass haunting her. The church wasn't just old, it's alive, its bells and reflections tied to a truth she was meant to uncover. Her team's bond gave her strength, but Liam's visions, Clara's fear, and Harlan's warnings suggested danger. As midnight approached, the bells tolled faintly, and Sophia knew the church was waking, its ghosts demanding to be heard, pulling her deeper into a mystery that mirrored her own unresolved grief. The St. Agnes Church loomed under a heavy New England dusk. crumbling stone walls and stained glass windows casting an eerie glow as Sophia Grant pushed forward with her restoration project. The architect, driven to reopen the abandoned church to honor her father's unsolved murder, felt the weight of its secrets pressing in, the midnight bells ringing without cause, and the ghostly light revealing kneeling figures had shaken her. While the stained glass is fleeting reflection of a congregation, her father, his face among them had turned curiosity into unease. Her team Liam, her skeptical assistant grieving, his and Clara. The fearful historian shared her growing dread, their bond tested by the church's haunted past. Work continued in the nave, the air thick with dust and tension. Sophia measured the altar's cracked marble, her hands unsteady as she recalled the stained glass's vision. The panel, depicting a serene congregation, flickered again, but now it showed a midnight mass. Figures kneeling in prayer, their faces twisted in sorrow. One figure, unmistakably her father, looked up, his eyes pleading for justice. Sophia gasped, dropping her tape measure, the clang echoing in the silent church. The vision faded, the glass normal again. Liam, reinforcing the pews, noticed her distress. "You okay, Sophia? You look like you've seen a ghost." Clara, sorting through artifacts, shivered. She might have. "Saw something in the glass to my grandmother, praying, but she's been dead for years." Sophia's heart raced. The journal Clara found echoing in her mind, Father Elias. Murdered in 1876 during a midnight mass, his death tied to a hidden confession. The coincidence of her father's name, Elias, felt like a message. "We need to know more," she said, her voice firm despite her fear. "This church is trying to tell us something." They searched the sacristy, finding more records letters from the 1800s hinting at Father Elias's murder by a town founder, possibly a Harlan, to silence a scandal involving stolen church funds. Clara's hands trembled as she read aloud. They buried the truth to protect their wealth. The congregation knew, but no one spoke. Liam's skepticism wavered. "I saw her in the glass earlier. Like she was warning me." Sophia's sympathy deepened. Her own grief for her father mirrored in their losses. "We're all seeing things tied to our past. Maybe the church is using that to reach us." The bells rang again, not midnight but sporadic, their toll sharp and urgent. Sophia led the team to the bell tower, finding no ropes or mechanisms to explain the sound. The air grew colder, the stained glass glowing faintly, reflecting the same congregation. Now clear men, women, children, their eyes hollow, kneeling as if trapped. Sophia's father's face appeared again, his lips moving silently. "Find it." She stumbled back, her heart pounding. "Find what?" she whispered, but the vision faded, the bells silent. Clara clutched her cross necklace, her fear palpable. "It's the murder. They're still here, praying for justice." During a break, they sat in the vestry, sharing coffee to calm their nerves. Sophia opened up further, her voice soft. "My dad's case was never solved. I always felt I should have pushed harder, found his killer. This church, it's like it's asking me to fix that, too." Liam nodded, his eyes distant. "I blamed myself for not being there when I crashed. Maybe this place is digging up our guilt." Clara's voice cracked. "I ran from religion because it felt like chains. Now it's pulling me back, and I'm scared." Their shared vulnerability strengthened their resolve, but the church's energy darkened. Sophia visited the town library again, digging through archives. A faded letter confirmed the Harlan family's role in funding St. Agnes, with whispers of their involvement in the priest's death to protect their legacy. "Mr. Harlan's recent warning." Dante's stir-up old stories took on a sinister edge. Back at the church, the stained glass shimmered, the congregation's faces more vivid, their prayers almost audible. Sophia felt watched, the statue's stone eyes seeming to track her movements. She journaled her fears, her father's face haunting her, urging her to uncover the truth. The bells tolled again, unprompted. And the glass reflected a final image, a knife in the priest's chest, blood pooling, a shadowy figure fleeing. Sophia's fear surged, but her mission to reopen the church was now a quest for justice. It's not just for her father, but for the ghosts trapped in St. Agnes. The team's safety worried her, and Harlan's shadow loomed larger, suggesting the past was closer and more dangerous than she'd imagined. The St. Agnes Church seemed to breathe with a restless energy, its shadowed nave and cracked, stained glass windows pulsing with secrets as Sophia Grant pushed forward with her restoration. The architect, driven to reopen the abandoned New England church to honor her father's unsolved murder, felt the past closing in. The midnight bells, the ghostly kneeling figures in the light, and the stained glass reflecting a congregation with her father's face had deepened her unease. Tying the church's 1876 murder of Father Elias to her own grief, her team Liam, her skeptical assistant haunted by his death, and Clara, the fearful historian, shared her dread. Their bond strained by the church's supernatural pull. Work pressed on, but the air grew heavier, the statues of saints along the walls casting long, accusing shadows. Sophia was cleaning a stained glass panel when she noticed a statue of St. Agnes, its stone eyes glistening with red tears that dripped onto the floor. She gasped. Touching the liquid, it was warm like blood, but vanished under her fingers. "Liam, Clara, come here," she called, her voice shaking. Liam rushed over, his tools clattering. "What the hell is that?" Clara's face paled, clutching her notebook. "It's bleeding. The saints are bleeding." They checked other statues, St. Peter, St. Mary's weeping red from eyes or wounds, pooling briefly before evaporating. Sophia's heart pounded. The journal about Father Elias's murder flashing in her mind, a priest killed to hide a town founder's corruption, possibly a Harlan. "This is connected," she said. "The church wants us to know." Liam's skepticism cracked. Saw her again in St. Mary's face. She looked scared. Clara's voice trembled. "My family warned me about churches like this. Places where sins don't stay buried." Sophia's fear grew, but her resolve held. She dug through the sacristy, finding a hidden compartment in the altar with a sealed letter from Father Elias. The Harlan family stole from the church. Silenced me to hide their greed. My blood stains this place. Her stomach churned. Mr. Harlan, the town figure opposing the restoration, was tied to this legacy. Mr. Harlan arrived unannounced, his polished demeanor jarring against the church's decay. "Progress?" he asked, eyeing the bleeding statues with a flicker of unease. "This church should stay closed. It's unsafe." Sophia's suspicion flared. "Unsafe because of what your family did. We found proof a priest murdered to protect your name." Harlan's smile tightened. "Old rumors. Focus on your work, or funding stops." His threat chilled her, but Sophia refused to back down. She gathered the team, sharing the letter. "The church is showing us the truth, Father Elias, the Harlans, the cover-up. We keep going." Clara shook her head, tears welling. "I can't. This is too much bleeding statues, ghosts. I left religion to escape this." Liam touched her arm, his voice soft. "We're in this together." "I'm scared too, but Sophia's right, we can't stop." Sophia's sympathy deepened, her own guilt over her father's unsolved case mirroring their fears. "This is for him. For all of us who've lost someone, we'll find justice." That night alone in the vestry, Sophia journaled her fears, the red tears haunting her. She recalled her father's murder, the police's dismissal, her failure to push for answers. The church felt like a mirror, reflecting her pain. She visited the stained glass, now dark, but a faint glow flickered, showing the congregation again, her father's face clearer, his lips forming words, "Confess." The bells tolled, not midnight but erratic, shaking the walls. Sophia ran to the nave, finding another statue, St. Jude, bleeding from its hands, the red pooling longer before vanishing. A whisper filled the air. "Find us," and the glass reflected a knife in Father Elias's chest, a Harlan-like figure fleeing. Her fear surged, but so did her need to uncover the truth. She called Liam and Clara, their faces pale but determined. "The church is speaking," she said. "Statues, the glass, they're tied to the murder. We need to expose it." Liam nodded, his voice low. "I saw her again, begging me to help." "I'm in." Clara clutched her cross, whispering, "I'm terrified, but I trust you." Harlan's warning echoed, his family's legacy a shadow over the church. Sophia's mission to reopen St. Agnes was now a quest for justice. But the bleeding saints and ghostly reflections suggested the past was not just history, it was alive, demanding a reckoning. Her team's safety worried her, The church's growing unrest hinted that the truth would come at a cost, one she wasn't sure she could pay. The St. Agnes Church pulsed with an oppressive energy, its shadowed nave and cracked stained-glass windows alive with a restless malice. Sophia Grant, the restoration architect driven to reopen the abandoned New England church to honor her father's unsolved murder, stood on the edge of panic. The midnight bells, the ghostly kneeling figures in the light, the stained glass showing her father's face. And now the bleeding statues had tied the church's 1876 murder of Father Elias to her own grief. Her team Liam, her assistant haunted by his death, and Clara, the historian wrestling with her religious fears, teetered on breaking. Their bond strained by the church's supernatural demands. Mr. Harlan's threat to halt funding and his family's link to the murder loomed, making Sophia's mission a dangerous quest for truth. Restoration work faltered, the air thick with dread. Sophia was inspecting the altar when a low, haunting organ note echoed through the nave, though the church's organ had been silent for decades. The sound swelled into a hymn mournful and discordant, coming from nowhere. She ran to the choir loft, finding it empty, the keys untouched. The bells tolled erratically, and a faint light bloomed at the altar, revealing the kneeling figures again, gauntly, their faces gaunt, praying in silence. Her father's face appeared among them, his eyes pleading confess. Liam and Clara joined her, their faces pale. "That music, it's not possible," Liam said, his skepticism shattered. "I saw her again, Maya in the light." Clara clutched her cross, trembling. "It's the congregation from 1876. They're trapped, like Father Elias." Sophia's heart raced. The bleeding statues and Father Elias's letter flashing in her mind, his murder by a Harlan to hide stolen church funds. Desperate for answers, she organized a light gathering in the nave, hoping to communicate. They sat in a circle, the organ music swelling, the statues weeping red tears that vanished on the floor. The stained glass glowed, reflecting the midnight mass, the figures' prayers now audible. Justice. The music grew frantic, and Clara screamed, pointing to a statue of St. Agnes, its eyes bleeding profusely, red pooling at its base. Sophia's father's voice echoed in her mind, pleading for the truth about his own murder. She whispered, "I'm trying, Dad," her voice breaking. Liam's hand shook, his voice low. "I saw her, my saying I failed her. This church knows our guilt." Clara's fear spilled over. "I ran from faith because it trapped me. Now it's trapping us all." Sophia's sympathy for their pain strengthened her resolve. She dug through the sacristy, finding a hidden diary from a parishioner, detailing Father Elias's discovery of embezzlement by a Harlan ancestor. The priest was killed during Mass, his confession hidden to protect the family's wealth. The diary mentioned a public reckoning to free the souls, tying to the ghostly pleas. Mr. Harlan arrived, his face tight with anger. "You're stirring up trouble," he snapped. "Stop this nonsense, or I'll shut you down." Sophia stood her ground, the diary in hand. "Your family killed Father Elias to hide their crimes. The church is showing us." Harlan's eyes darkened, but he stormed out, his threat lingering. The organ music surged, the bells ringing wildly, and the kneeling figures appeared in the nave, their forms solidifying. A child's ghost stepped forward, whispering, "Tell them." Sophia's father's face flashed again, his voice clear. "Confess it all." She broke down, confiding in Liam and Clara. "My dad's case was never solved. I didn't push hard enough, didn't fight for him. This church, it's making me face that." Liam nodded, tears in his eyes. "I wasn't there for her accident. I get it." Clara's voice cracked. "I'm scared, but I want to help them and us." The music stopped, but the air grew colder, the statue's blood pooling longer. Sophia's fear peaked, her team's safety at risk. She planned a public event to reveal the church's history, hoping to appease the ghosts. The stained glass flickered, showing Father Elias's murder, a knife, a Harlan figure, blood on the altar. The bells tolled, the light intensifying, and Sophia knew the church was demanding more than restoration. It wanted justice. Her father's plea echoed, blending with the ghosts, and Sophia feared the public confession would either free them or break her. As Harlan's shadow and the church's wrath closed in, the St. Agnes Church thrummed with a restless energy as Sophia Grant stood in the nave. the air thick with the scent of dust and the faint temps of blood from the weeping statues. The architect, driven to reopen the abandoned New England church to honor her father's unsolved murder, faced a truth that chilled her to the core. The midnight bells, the ghostly kneeling figures, the stained glass visions of her father, the phantom organ music had revealed the 1876 murder of Father Elias, killed by a Harlan ancestor to hide embezzlement. Her team Liam, grieving. His and Clara, wrestling with her religious fears, stood with her, their bond forged in shared loss but strained by the church's vengeful spirits. Mr. Harlan's threats to halt funding and his family's dark legacy loomed, making Sophia's mission a desperate fight for justice. The public event to confess the church's history was set, the town filling the pews, unaware of the supernatural storm brewing. Sophia stood at the altar, her heart pounding, the diary of Father Elias's murder clutched in her hands. The bells tolled midnight, unprompted, their deep chimes shaking the walls. A ghostly light bloomed, revealing the kneeling figures, men, women, children, their faces gaunt, praying for release. The stained glass glowed, animating the murder scene. Father Elias stabbed, a Harlan figure fleeing, blood pooling on the altar. Liam whispered, "They're here," his eyes fixed on his face among the ghosts. Clara clutched her cross, murmuring prayers, her fear giving way to resolve. Sophia addressed the crowd, her voice steady, despite her terror. St. Agnes holds a secret. 1876, Father Elias was murdered by a town founder, a Harlan to hide stolen church funds. The congregation knew, but their voices were silenced. The audience murmured, thinking it a historical talk, but the bells grew frantic, the organ music swelling into a haunting hymn. The statues wept red tears dripping onto the floor, and the ghosts solidified, their eyes locked on Mr. Harlan in the front row. His face paled, his hands trembling as he stood. "This is nonsense," he shouted, but his voice cracked. The stained glass shifted, showing a clear image of his ancestor, knife in hand, over Father Elias's body. The ghosts chanted, "Confess," their voices a chorus that drowned the crowd's gasps. Sophia's father's face appeared in the glass, his eyes pleading, "Tell them." Her heart ached, her guilt over his unsolved murder surging, but she pressed on. "Mr. Harlan," she said, holding up the diary, "your family covered up the murder. The church demands the truth." The ghosts surged toward Harlan, their hands passing through him, cold and accusing. He stumbled back, screaming, "My great-grandfather did it. He killed the priest to keep the money. I hid the records to protect our name." The crowd gasped, the truth no longer a performance but a reckoning. The bells peaked, the music deafening, and the stained glass shattered, shards falling harmlessly as the ghosts' faces softened, their prayers answered. Harlan collapsed, sobbing as police in the audience moved to arrest him for obstructing historical justice. The light faded, the kneeling figures vanishing, the bells and music falling silent. The statue's tears dried, and the church warmed, its oppressive weight lifting. The crowd, stunned, applauded, believing it a stage drama, but Sophia, Liam, Clara knew the truth. The ghosts had been heard, their justice served. Sophia stood with her team, tears streaming down her face. "We did it," she whispered, feeling her father's presence, proud and at peace. Liam hugged her, his own grief eased, while Clara smiled, her fear replaced by faith in their purpose. The church was reborn, its doors opened to the public, its curse lifted by the confession. As the crowd left, Sophia lingered in the nave, the stained glass, dark but serene. She journaled her father's memory, finding closure in exposing the truth, though her own case remained unsolved. The church felt lighter, but as she locked the doors, a faint organ note echoed, a whisper of her father's voice. "Well done." She froze, her heart racing, wondering if the ghosts were truly gone, or if St. Agnes held more secrets. Her mission was complete, the church restored. But the lingering note suggested the past was never fully silent, and Sophia walked into the night, her steps cautious, as if the bells might ring again.